All right, so I understand, let us know if that is not something you're comfortable with. I completely understand that too. But again, welcome. I am Megan. I am the president of the King Arts PTA here. We have a wonderful executive team, most of which are here joining us today, and some of our great members as well. And we have a few things on our agenda this evening. We do have a few PTA business items we need to attend to initially. So the first thing I wanted to do was just share what our agenda will be this evening, so everyone is aware of that. So I have that here for you all. The first thing that we will do on our meeting tonight is to pass our minutes. Jeff, I was wondering if you could share those once I'm kind of done sharing this agenda, and we can pass those. We also have a bylaws vote to do. So we've adjusted and shared out these edits that we wanted to do for the bylaws. So wanted to have a vote on that as well with our members. Then we will have Kristen and Jeff talk a little bit about executive team nominations. In other words, some of the open roles that we have on the executive team so that folks can share their interest. I know we're going to have a ton of people who are going to jump in, and then we will have Jason talk a little bit about kind of what's going on with the financials, just a general kind of overview, and we'll have a more detailed kind of report in our next meeting in May. And then we have Ms. Edwards, who's going to do a presentation on the GSA, and also some wonderful ETHS scholars who will join us as well to share some of their advice and recommendations. Some Q&A time as well. If you ever have any questions you would like to ask anonymously, you may message Matthew Pearson, and he will ask those kinds of questions for you, no problem. We've got a Q&A, and then of course, if we need more, we will conclude after that. So that's it for this evening. Jeff, do you have the minutes from the March meeting?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If you could just share that.
Let me figure this out. Okay. Only been home for 13 months and still trying to do Zoom. Okay, can everybody see?
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. So if we could have a if we could have a member of the PTA vote to a motion to pass the minutes from March.
A motion.
I move to pass the, seconded.
Excellent. Thank you very much. They have passed. All right. So the next piece of our meeting this evening, just wanted to, I wasn't sure if everyone had actually seen the bylaw or had any questions about the addition or the edits to the bylaws. So if you all had any questions, I just wanted to open it up for that and see if anyone had questions to those edits. Very exciting. Okay, excellent. So what I would like to do is vote to pass the bylaw, and I have that by a poll. So I'm going to send you a launch of this poll, and then we'll share it out right now. So it's just, are you in favor of passing the updated bylaws? Yeah, you may stay, Sam, no problem at all. No worries. All right, I think I just need a few more of you to view the question and to vote. All right. Has everyone voted? I think we are good. Okay, so I believe we just have some folks who are viewing who are not a part of the PTA, but 100% passed of the folks here who are. So I think we are in good shape there. And the next thing I wanted to do was to have Kristen and Jeff just speak a little bit about the open roles on the executive team that we will be sharing out through email tomorrow.
Sure. So we're gonna just share with you the open positions. We have some people staying in their roles, so they won't. They're 2-year terms. So I believe, or Jamie is up for been nominated for president. So our Jamie, who's on here, but you can't see her, she's there. And I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, know her. The president resides over all the meetings, including the executive board and other committees, appoints special committees, and is a member of the PTA council and delegates other work to other officers within the PTA. We have 2 co-vice presidents. I'm going to stay on in my position, and then Megan is moving from president and is nominated for one of the co-vice president positions. Matthew has been the VP of marketing and branding and really coordinates and oversees the sort of creation of our marketing and branding materials and messaging, and he's going to stay on in his position. We do have an opening, drum roll, our vice president of fundraising. We would love to have someone join the leadership team who is committed and passionate about creating opportunities to raise funds for the school that are consistent with our commitment to equity. We think we'll be hopefully returning next year, so there might be some fun ways to build community around that effort. Vice President of Guardian Engagement. Jeff, do you want to finish out the rest of the document or want me to keep going? I don't want to hog the mic.
I'm finding my mute button. There we go. Yes, the VP of Guardian Engagement. This is really coordinating our room guardian process, finding and identifying parents and guardians for each homeroom and really supporting them in their roles and being a liaison between guardians and teachers. We have an open position for treasurer. And this is really, you know, as it sounds, developing a budget for the PTA and maintaining those type of records, expense and income, money coming in, money coming out. And Jason did a great job, you know, in that role so far. So I'm sure he'll pass along some amazing stuff. And then the secretary, I plan on staying on as secretary, but recording the minutes for all the meetings, distributing copies of the minutes and agenda, maintaining the bylaws, as well as a list of all the current chairs of standing committees and other documents as needed. So I think those are the major roles. Did I miss one, Kristen?
I think VP of Communications. So
VP of Communications, yes. Plan to coordinate the production and dissemination of communications. And this includes the King Arts family memo content, as well as the PTA social media presence and A to Z Connect support. So our app support.
And I think we're going to be sending out a Google Doc that has information about the positions and then a nomination form where you can self-nominate. And the deadline is at April 30th, Jeff?
Yes, Friday, April 30th.
Okay. If you have questions and you want to talk, feel free to email. I'll throw my email in the chat and reach out to Jeff or I or anyone else on the PTA. We're happy to talk with you about what it's like in the glamorous role of PTA leadership team. I think we're headed in a great direction. The last few years have been really kind of reorganizing and refocusing the PTA. And I think heading back to school next year will be really an important year to rebuild and repair kind of that lost connection and sense of community. And, hopefully we want to get to a place where we have like 30 people at our PTA meetings because people feel a sense of ownership and high engagement. So we'd love you to consider making a commitment. I know probably most of you work full-time. I work full-time and parent, and I've been able to pull it off because it's a great team of people to just hang out with. So.
Yes,
Excellent.
definitely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
And invite your friends if you know any parents that might be interested in either the exec board or just coming to the meetings. Spread the word.
Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. Okay. So, Jason, I think we have you up next to just do an overall update for our finance. Thank you.
All right. In terms of the finances this year, right now we have not. We're in a pretty good place with the fact that we have not spent a lot of money this year. A lot of that is probably due to COVID. Obviously, we haven't had the chance to have events, but so far we've spent only around $14,000 this year. Compared to years past, I've been the treasurer for the last 3 years. We usually are around $40,000 to $45,000 in expenses at this point in the year. So that should tell you, obviously, that we are definitely not spending hardly any money this year. Luckily, because we've not been able to fundraise as much, it has not impacted us that much. We've had a nice reserve fund going into this year. So we are in a pretty good place. I cannot tell you at the moment kind of what the revenue that we receive through contributions to Member Hub is of yet. I will have a detailed report on the amount of money we have received by next meeting, or I will send that out before that. And just to give you a heads up that the bulk of that 14,000, probably 8,000 of that has come from the Grocery and Resource Program, which is very beneficial to the families of King Arts. So I'm glad we've been able to spend a significant more amount of money on that program, and we will be spending more money for the rest of the year. So it's, we're not at a bad place. Now, the big issue is now, I know a lot of you have heard about the PEP and one fund that'll be taking place next year. There will be a meeting May 26th regarding the particulars of the program and how it's all going to work for next year. I will attend, and probably one of my last things I do as the PTA treasurer. But we will have more details on how the PTA One Fund will work at that time at the end of the school year. Unfortunately, I cannot give you any updates right now, but I look forward to updating everyone in the future regarding that. It's probably my last line of duty. And that's, pretty much it of where we're at. Hopefully, I know, I've heard that we may be having possible fundraising later on this year. If we'll see. But as of right now, we're, not in a bad place. Like I said, I will give you details on how much money has been contributed through the Member Hub contributions in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate it.
No problem.
So are there any other questions regarding all of the PTA work and what we've been talking about so far? And if you have any as we move along, of course, feel free to just send that in the chat. I know Miss Edwards is here with us. Yay! Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to have you, so thank you. We are just very fortunate to have, Miss Edwards to share with us about the GSA and a presentation around how, as guardians and parents, we can be supporting our youth as best as we possibly can. And I know we also have 2 ETHS students who will be joining us as well to share their perspectives, which will be wonderful. Ms. Edwards, I have, there's plenty of time, so you let us know how much you need. That should be absolutely fine. And if you want to, you're able to share the screen and everything as well. So feel free to jump in, and we're happy to have you. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I am really appreciative of the time, and also that this is an area that the PTA wanted to get some more student voice about. So what we did was, the last few weeks, the members of the GSA have worked on putting together a presentation for you all, as well as Activism Week is coming up at the end of April. And so what you're going to see is the same thing that all students at King Arts are going to have access to for Day of Silence. So I will share my screen. Okay. And I'm like a super informal presenter. So if anything comes up or there's thoughts or questions, just please don't hesitate. You don't have to hold anything till the end. Okay, so I think one of the biggest things that I just want to open with is the GSA is also facilitated. It's myself, Mr. Carrillo, Miss Fritz, and Miss Berland. And so those are our 4 facilitators this year. This is my 5th year at King Arts, and also my 5th year being a sponsor of the GSA. And I'm just thrilled to see how much it has grown. What we really prioritize is that it's a student-run group. If they want to talk about something, that's what we're talking about. And so this presentation is my voice speaking, but it is a reflection of the things that the students chose to prioritize and what they thought was important. So they are working on a hello from King Arts. Unfortunately, it's not quite ready yet, but I will happily share. It's going to be fabulous, and lip syncing is involved. So I will definitely send that along once it is ready, so that you can see how awesome they all are. But they wanted to open this presentation and this discussion with a video called How to Be an LGBTQIA+ Ally. This is through a website called Amaze, and it's a resource that we utilize all the time in group because they have wonderful 2 to 3 minute clips that allow us to center conversation and get a shared understanding of what it is we're talking about, and then to have different perspectives. So since that's a practice that we utilize in GSA, they thought that it was important to do that with our parents as well. I also, my role at King Arts is the social worker, and I use this all of the time. It's a fantastic resource. Sorry, give me 1 second. It didn't save the specific video. There we go.
I'm so glad that you shared your feelings with me. You know, it's important not to keep those kind of things inside. Oh, sure. Don't worry. Your secret is safe with me. It's only me and Fishy here, and he's great at keeping secrets. You may be asking yourself, how can I support my LGBTQ friends and loved ones? This is called being an ally. An ally is someone who is not LGBTQ, but supports and stands up for people who are. For example, someone who is heterosexual can be an ally to those who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. There are many ways that you can be an ally to your LGBTQ friends and loved ones. The most important thing you can do is let your LGBTQ loved ones know that you are there to listen to if they need to talk. Knowing that they have someone to talk to can be super helpful. Another important way you can be an ally is to stand up for someone if they are being picked on or bullied because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. If they are standing up for themselves, it may help to have an ally stand with them. If you hear others say mean things, You can say, it really makes me feel uncomfortable when you say negative things about LGBTQ people. You can also get involved with LGBTQ organizations or causes. You may decide to join a GSA or Genders and Sexualities Alliance at your school, or you can work together with your friend to start one. Sometimes people who are LGBTQ feel like they're the only person around with their gender or sexual identity, but that's not true. Helping a friend or loved one find others that understand what they're going through is another great way to show that you care.
Okay. So the students chose that video, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be looking down at some of my notes that they gave me. They chose that video because they thought that it highlighted some of the really important things about how to be an ally and what is important, not only as adults supporting LGBTQIA+ youth, but also as adults who are teaching other youth as well. And so they talked a lot about the creating space where the students can feel comfortable, and a way to display that space and that creation of availability for conversations is acknowledgement that heterosexuality and cisgender are gender identities and sexualities. And so not identifying as trans or gay or asexual is not a reason to not be part of the conversation. And so they've really talked a lot this year about identity development and how do we get our cisgender and straight peers to understand that while those are the normed and more socially accepted identities, that those are still identities within the realm of gender and sexuality. And so creating that dialogue that allows all of us to engage in conversations about gender and sexuality. And so that was kind of the number one thing that came to the students' mind when they talked about what do we want people to know, is that you are a part of this community just by having those identities. And so you can go to Pride as a straight person. You can join these groups. You can be a member of the GSA as a straight youth. And so I think that was kind of their biggest takeaway, and something that they wanted everyone to continue to have conversations about. So here are a few of the notes that they felt were really important for adults who are working with LGBTQIA+ youth to know. The first one would be to learn the terms. So there are so many different gender identities. We play, Jeopardy in GSA all the time because terms are constantly evolving and there are always new identities. And a lot of the identities that we talk about, such as gender creative or gender nonconforming or gender expansive, can often relate, and it can be confusing as which means what. And so something that was really important to them was saying, take the time to do some research, take the time to go through resources to get a solid understanding on what all the letters in LGBTQIA+ mean, as well as the additional identities that aren't explicitly named in the title of the community. And so that was a huge one for them, is just knowing the terms. Another one was normalizing conversations about gender and sexuality. Our middle school students are actually able to name that when we say sexuality and the term sex is in it, it can be very, so my students say cringy all the time. So apparently it can be cringy if people don't know how to have those conversations. And so as adults, if we're not modeling comfort in talking about sexual identity, sexuality, and sex, it makes it just increasingly uncomfortable for our students to be able to come to us and talk about it and talk about their own identity formation and development as well. Another thing that they talked about normalizing, like I said earlier, is participation in events and groups. And they also, again, were very appreciative of this space to be able to highlight the GSA as one of those, and hopefully create some shared understanding that not just with our teachers and our students, but so our families can also know this is a resource. If we're having conversations with your students or their friends, that there are people in the building who we talk about this all the time, and we're meeting every single week to create space in which the kids can bring what they need to bring to that space. Another thing is utilizing common and supportive language. So we practice a lot of sentence stems when we are addressing misgendering or not utilizing a student's affirmed pronouns. And so some of those sentence stems that the kids like to practice, but also wanted to share, are things that we also teach when we're talking about, we use these in the Racial Equity Summit as well. So general equity stems that can be applied when we're having conversations about various marginalized groups, such as, I heard you say this, and I'm wondering if you knew ... And so that's kind of one of the kids' go-tos is, I heard this or I noticed this, and I'm wondering. And so that's actually a tool that Dr. Darnisa Amante has coined and that she taught us a few years ago at our beginning of the year staff training, that has throughout the years become a tool that we, again, have normalized the use of so much that our students are using it when they can call people into conversations. And then the last one, and something that I'm loving seeing on the screen, is pronouns. Just including that in part of our how we identify ourselves that's how we open every GSA is, this is my name, these are my pronouns, and we usually add something fun like your favorite ice cream flavor. But just including those pronouns in your introduction. And so the students also felt it would be important for you all to know just kind of the basics of what the GSA is. So it is the Gender and Sexuality Alliance. I know for a lot of adults, when it first came out, it was the Gay Straight Alliance, but we have shifted to Gender and Sexualities Alliance as it's a more inclusive and representative title of what our mission is. So our mission that the students have written over the years is the GSA is a club dedicated to discussing, learning about, and educating others about topics concerning LGBTQIA youth. And our goal is to make King Arts a safe, knowledgeable, and enjoyable place for everyone. We're talking about revising our goal right now because the students have talked a lot about creating an environment of belongingness and feeling like they belong at King Arts. So we are working on that, right? That's our project after this project, is a revision of our goal to make sure that belongingness is explicitly named, because that has been really important in developing our community. Oops. So the GSA is currently available for any 6th, 7th, or 8th grade student. We meet on Fridays at 11:30, and any student can complete this form. It goes directly to me. We talk a lot about who has access to this form, because there has been concern of, do all of the teachers see it or do other students see? And so GSA is a space that students are provided with whatever level of anonymity or visibility that they are comfortable with. So if they want to only be engaging with camera off, or we've also, when we were in person, had students who would prefer to meet with one of the facilitators privately to have their thoughts and perspectives shared with the group, even if they weren't yet comfortable joining the group. And so we try very hard to make sure that there are various levels of participation that students can engage in based on their level of comfort and where they are in their journey. That being said, we try to make it as safe and belonging and welcoming as a space. So we've rarely had students who have come and said, oh, nope, that wasn't for me. It's normally, oh, that wasn't as scary as I thought. So we meet once a week. And so students can complete this form. I then see it and I'm able to add them. We have a Google Classroom where we share resources and post updates. The students are constantly posting their LGBTQIA art on there. So it's really just an additional way for us to engage when we're not in session, as well as they get the weekly link to our meetings. Sorry, it's a lot of my voice. Okay. The next part that the kids thought was really important is for you all to know what gender-related supports are available to any student who is a member of District 65. And so this is something that the students that we spent a lot of time talking about this year, because our students reported being unaware of what supports were available to them. And so as our middle school students, we're often encouraging independence and self-advocacy, and it's hard to advocate for things that you don't know aren't there. So every District 65 school has a gender support coordinator. King Arts gender support coordinators are myself and Ms. Margolis. And we also, all students have availability for a gender support plan. Students can have a gender support plan with the support and consent of their parents or guardians, or without. We are able to provide students with support and accommodations and utilize affirmed names and pronouns, even if families aren't yet there and aren't yet able to support that from their home perspective. So we obviously always want our families to be in support. And if a student says that this is the name that they want to use at school, but their guardian wants to use their given name at school, we're going to use their affirmed name and pronouns. And so that can be done informally. It also can be done through a gender support plan. The other kind of two big areas that we're able to provide students with formal and documented support around gender is student information change and an affidavit of parentage. And these two do require consent and approval from families. Student information change allows us to, in Google Classroom, in SysK-12, allows us to have students' affirmed names and pronouns. The only challenge there is that for things that utilize a third party, we sometimes as a district don't have control over the student information provided. But if we can make the change, we absolutely will. And then an affidavit of parentage allows you as parents and guardians to say, I want my students' medical and birth certificate. I want their medical records blocked from anyone who isn't like high-level administrator at JEH. That's just, again, if that student doesn't identify with their sex assigned at birth, then we don't really need to know. You are who you say you are. And that's all we need to know to support you. Additionally, we've included the link to the District 65 commitment to equity. There's an entire page within the equity page that speaks to the gender related supports, our policy in the district. Again, students, it just names all the things that we have available, as well as our practices on students utilizing their affirmed identities, facilities, things like that. And then lastly, they wanted to share with you all, we have a GSA website, and the website has not just kind of our basic information that we all talked about, but resources. So many resources that we have found to be helpful, such as Amaze, which was that video we all got to watch together, GLSEN. So here is if you are interested in furthering your learning or just continuing to explore different areas, there are quite a few resources on here. The last thing that the GSA wanted you to know that they do is every year we have a service project. We talk about furthering our mission, and our goal it means enhancing our community in all ways that we can. And so some of the service projects have been, I know it's been a while since parents have been able to be in the building, but we created a mural last year to increase visibility of our club. The year before, we created these gender booklets that you can see here that provided an educational tool for all staff and students. Last year would definitely have to be my favorite. We had a Pie the Teacher raffle. And so that assembly was absolutely hilarious and so much fun. But all of the money that we raised went to every classroom at King Arts was provided with a book that had an LGBTQIA plus main character. So again, the fun, we would have just done it for the fun and to continue to pie teachers, but also we utilized that to increase visibility and provide our students with resources that have centralized characters of LGBTQ identity. That was a lot of me talking, so but that's what they put together for you all. I hope that is what you're looking for. I will stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Edwards. That was really informative. I know I really appreciate all of the information. I so appreciate you also checking in with the scholars about what they want us to know. That's so helpful. Is there anyone have any questions at this point? Kristen.
Yes. So I just texted my daughter who's in 5th grade. She did not, at King Arts, she did not know that we have a GSA, which is surprising to me. But she wants to know if she can join. And I think I'm curious too, if it's possible to invite 5th graders, because I know just with her own development and her peer group, they're very much talking about sexuality and gender and like trying to figure out their pronouns. And I know she's definitely felt like some discomfort at school or judgment, you know, like social exclusion. And so I think it would be really powerful to consider maybe inviting 5th graders in, because I think developmentally, you know, it might be appropriate, but also like thinking about how can the GSA students engage with the rest of the school, like to let them know that they're here. And, you know, it's kind of cool if you're struggling and you're in 3rd grade and, you know, there's a cool 7th grader, you know, like it just feels really affirming.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. This year has obviously been challenging for so many reasons I don't have to name. So how we have our students engaging with each other has been limited this year. Absolutely. In previous years, something that has been a great opportunity is through Day of Silence or through different lessons that we will have GSA members go into younger classrooms to lead conversations that they practice or to talk about different books that they've read. And so there have been opportunities in the past that I'm really hoping we can get back to, but also kind of further and build upon. As for younger students, I actually was just having this conversation with a 3rd grade teacher and a 4th grade teacher, because I think this identity development is happening much younger than adults. I think our kids are always there, and sometimes our adults maybe aren't there. For me, I think we absolutely should have an elementary GSA. Personally, I just cannot facilitate that GSA. So if we were to have an elementary sponsor, I am so happy to help set that up and go through all the steps that we went through to create the middle school GSA. I think it's a matter of human resources at King Arts. And so I would love to create that opportunity. And I think that we have very supportive administrators. And so I don't see that we would have a ton of barriers to creating that. I think it's a matter of figuring out the logistics, figuring out who the staff sponsors are, getting student information and figuring out how we're going to connect with those students. So sorry, that's kind of like an and if kind of answer.
I think that's great. I see Sam, I know you have your hand up.
Sorry, I'm really bad at Zoom. I don't know what to do.
That's
fine. Yeah, but actually I was gonna add on to what you were saying about actually I feel like I don't even have to ask questions really, because you really cover a lot, and I think it's really amazing, and especially listening to your like what people themselves want to be heard. I think that's awesome. But also how you like texted your kid and wanted to see if they want to go to GSA. I think that's awesome, especially because it definitely happens way younger than people think. And I think people want to shield their children. I think they're too young to learn, which if anything, I feel like it's so important that they know, because like for me in 1st grade, I knew what the word like gay meant, but I literally told on a kid for saying it because I thought it was bad. Because if you don't teach kids what it is and they don't have any representation, they're instantly going to think that it's a bad thing. So I definitely think that needs to be shown to younger kids, not even just like, I feel like they're teaching it way too late, even in school. So I think it'd be important for them to like be aware and like be part of that. So.
Yeah, and I got a question about this very thing, through the anonymous chats. I don't think it's really anything different, just affirming that someone asked about GSA programming for elementary age kids.
Ms. Edwards, if there's a way that we can have like, I don't know if we need like parent support or something to help work on that, but I want you to know that's available too, right?
That's
So-
wonderful to know. And I will happily send kind of a follow-up email just to let the staff know that I came to this PTA meeting, and that not only has interest been expressed from students and staff and parents. So it sounds like as a community, we're all kind of saying that this would be beneficial for our elementary students. And I'm happy to recruit and to help build that and help, guide someone through the process, since I've been through the process of setting up a GSA. Currently, all of our facilitators just so happen to be positioned in the middle school, or middle school teachers or middle school social worker for myself. And so our schedules are the current issue there. But I know that we have so many wonderful elementary staff, and I don't think that we would have a hard time finding a sponsor, because like you said, our students are ready. And I know that our staff just wants to do what they can for our students. So I'm sure that there's someone out there. It's just a matter of recruiting and getting it set up.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Wonderful. And this is, can you guys hear me? This is Jamie. Sorry. Okay, great. And I'm also wondering too, I'm talking more to the PTA and our teacher liaison that's on the call with us, Amy, if there's also ways that we can further support our middle school students, in terms of kind of a wraparound as parents, as teachers, to further their vision. Because when I think about their mission statement and I think about where we're at today, like how far close are we into achieving that? That's something I think as parents, as a community, we should really think deeply about, like how can we support creating that environment that everyone feels welcome and safe at our school.
I really appreciate you naming that, Jamie, because I think one of the biggest challenges that we've had as a GSA, we often provide a space that we reactively are able to address concerns around peer conflict, or someone not utilizing a student's affirmed pronouns. And I think as a school and as a community as a whole, I think you all being on this call and inviting me and asking for the student perspective, as well as just the staff that we have and the kiddos that we have, it shows that we're ready. And I think that we have the tools and the personnel who want to create a culture and environment that we're able to proactively set up supports. There's always going to be situations that we have to react to. But I think that if we are more adequately able to provide people with the knowledge and the language of how do I handle that in the moment, or who do I talk to when that happens, I think that belongingness piece that I spoke to earlier would be much more achievable.
Absolutely. I wanted to also introduce Sam and Chris to our call. And I wasn't sure if I formally introduced you all, so I apologize if I did not. These are our wonderful ETHS scholars that are joining us to share their perspectives as well. So Sam and Chris, I'm not sure if you would like to, just kind of freely share, if you would like, kind of to have us do some questions. How would you like to continue this conversation?
I'm fine with like talking about my experience at the high school and what I think is really effective, and also I'm also fine with answering questions as well. Quick side note, my light is flickering, so if you see that, that's what that is. Just to let you know. Also, since you guys are all adults and teachers, am I allowed to give 2 quick book recommendations for your kids and students? Because I think you'll appreciate.
Oh my gosh, we would love that. Of course,
so
absolutely.
They're both comic books, which I find helpful because visual aids are great. So the first one is A Quick Guide to They Them Pronouns. This
Awesome.
one just basically teaches you how to use they them pronouns in the singular sense, which I know some people struggle with sometimes, which is fine. And then this one is A Quick and Easy Guide to Queer and Trans Identities. This one does talk about sexual orientation and those within that topic. So this is probably better for older kids, like 7th and 8th graders, but it's nothing graphic. It's just it talks about sex. So, But yeah, yeah.
Could you say the last one again? I didn't get all the words written down.
Yeah, it's called a quick and easy guide to queer and trans identities.
Chris, I was also wondering, I'm having a hard time hearing you. I just wanted to see if maybe you could move your mic or something a little bit closer.
It's my my headphones weren't completely plugged in, that's why.
That is so much better. Thank you. We can definitely share those links out too with the parent community for sure. So Sam and Chris, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind maybe talking a little bit about, you know, any information you would like parents to know or guardians to know, or I think we touched a little bit on, you know, really starting to normalize this conversation earlier in age, but just was curious if there was anything, you know, you were comfortable sharing about your experience that you feel like might be useful, or suggestions.
Yeah, I can go first real quick. So two things. Number one, I don't know if some of you are teachers or administrators in this call, because I don't go to King Arts, so I don't know what your system was. But one thing that's really good is like some teachers like that I had at ETHS at the beginning of the year had us fill out a Google form that had like what's your name and whatnot, but it also had a section of what are your pronouns, which is a good and like anonymous way to tell your teacher if like you use something other than he or she pronouns, or you use different pronouns without like feeling targeted, you know, because one thing about queer and trans people especially is that sometimes asking everybody out loud when people are in the room can be a little difficult. So it's better to ask kids when they're by themselves, so they don't have to worry about like what their classmates will think. But for the parents and guardians in the call, be patient with your kids if they do end up like being gay or trans or whatnot, because like I didn't know about myself nearly as much as I do now when I was in middle school. And I went through a lot of identity changes and a lot of soul searching, and I changed a lot of things. But like, you know, like your kids are growing and they're at like a really weird time in their lives. So they might come to you one day and be like, hey, can you use they, them pronouns? And then like 2 weeks later, they're like, actually, on second thought, I would prefer she or her pronouns. And just like, it's gonna take like time and like working through it together, but like, it's just like a nice, yeah, just like be there for them as they figure it out, because they'll definitely thank you later in life. So yeah.
Okay. So for the Google Form thing that Chris was mentioning, it is super helpful to have that, and I love when teachers have that. It's very comforting to know that your teacher is gonna be accepting, but also they might add another section of it saying what pronouns to use around your parents or what name to use, which I also think is helpful, because then if you're not out yet to your parents, you're not gonna be put in any danger. So that's another thing that is very comforting. Also, like Chris was saying, being patient and understanding is extremely important. And asking questions is definitely okay. It's not a bad thing. Of course, it depends on how you ask it. But for me personally, whenever anyone asks me questions, I'm totally okay with it, as long as it's not like who made you like this? Like, because it's not like anyone made me like this. This is just who I am. And again, adding on to like the changing how you identify, this is extremely important, because it's not like you always know who you are. It's not like you always have figured out. It takes time to figure out, and it's never too late or early to figure it out or to become confident in how you identify, because it's such a long process to say like I'm this and be proud of that. But also knowing that it's okay to change labels, and because sometimes when people change labels, they're scared because they're like, I felt so comfortable. It takes a while to get comfortable in an identity. And I think encouraging them to be able to change how they identify into a more comfortable one, encouraging them to do that is important, because they might be scared to do so. And I think sometimes people need that extra support and let them know that it is okay. And also knowing that you don't even have to have a label. I feel like a lot of people think that they have to, and it is good to have one because it can, instead of just saying, it's so much easier to explain how you feel rather than just like having to give a long explanation. You can just say you are this and people be like, oh, okay. So it is easier and I understand that, but also labels aren't a must. What matters is that you're comfortable, and that's really it. So.
Thank you so much, Sam. Ms. Edwards,
Sam,
did you
can
want
I-
to say something?
Can I add to something you said? Because it's something that our students, I really appreciate that you brought in what name and pronouns do you use, and what name and pronouns do you use with these people, with your family or with your friends. Some of our students in GSA have mentioned how helpful it is if when they are informing a peer or a staff member of a change in pronouns, to say, thank you for sharing that with me. And is this something that you want me to utilize when it's just us, or is this something that you're comfortable utilizing in front of the class? Because that can be different and change. And so I think that, Sam, that was a really great point, that clarifying who the student is comfortable with the utilization of their affirmed name and pronouns can be really helpful. Sorry, just wanted to.
Excellent, thank you. Does anyone
I have a
else have any
question.
questions?
Yeah, I do. For either one, Chris or Sam. So I'm just curious. For my daughter has come to me recently and is starting to explore pronouns and who she is. And like last week, she said my pronouns are she and they, and I'm like, are you allowed to have she and they? Like, I don't know how that works. And I'm sure you are, but that kind of caught me off guard. I'm used to like she, her, they, them. And then, you know, she's like, I think I'm bisexual, or I think I'm pansexual. And she's kind of like all over the place, which I'm fine with. And, you know, that's exploration, and she's trying to figure out who she is. And I'm sure it will take many years for that to become clear. But do you all have any tips for us as parents when our kids are bringing those topics to us? Ways we can respond that you would have felt helpful if your parents had responded or did respond in a way that felt really encouraging and validating?
All right. I think for the pronouns part, especially if you don't know how to use them, a really important thing to ask is, could you give me an example of how to use them so that you know how to? And also, usually when people use she, they pronouns, it's also important to ask, like, do I like use them interchangeably, or do I just stick with one? Like, what are you okay?
Sam,
Sam, you
your
just
audio
wanna-
cut out.
Sam, your audio just cut out.
Here, I can try to pick up, hopefully this is what Sam was trying to say, but essentially, yeah, like ask your kid like, oh, okay, because she, they is just an abbreviated way of saying she, her, and they, them pronouns. I know I've seen some confusion around that. And so just like ask her like, oh, okay, do you prefer if I use one over the other, or do you care if I just do it like 50-50, that sort of thing. Also, like for me personally, if your kid is like exploring sexualities, like I'm bisexual and then changing it to pansexual, I mean, I would just like say, just like kind of go with it, you know, like every time they come to you and tell you this, just like be validating me, like, thank you for sharing this with me. Um, you know, that sort of thing, because it is like a big thing, because it is very scary also. Like you can come out once, but a lot of people don't realize is that sometimes you have to come out a second time, and that is also terrifying because you have to change your label, and that can result in negative reactions from people who are like, well, you were just this like a week ago, why are you changing it now? So just like when your kid comes to you like changing, and because you're right, they're evolving and they're in the part of their life where they start to form their own identity, just like be there and be validating and offer resources if they want it, like the 2 books that I recommended. That can be very good. You can also like do events together, like go to Pride together, or attend like a well, maybe not Pride, but you can attend like a GSA event together, sort of thing. Just like see what you have in your local community, and just just learn together, that could also be good.
Thank you.
I have a question in the chat, but first, this is I have a question for you personally. Chris, you kind of mentioned this. Sam, love your input, and not necessarily saying that y'all are like going to be the definitive. You don't have to speak for like the whole pronoun usage world on this, but like if I said my pronouns were he, they, would I be saying I'm totally cool with they? You don't have to use he, him. Like they's awesome, or would it be more like I actively want you to use they at certain times, or both, or whatever? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, kind of what Sam was saying, it's really just like asking them, because for some people, it is like some days I prefer to use they, some days I prefer if you use them. I mean, sorry, he, but it's just sort of asking. So like if someone tells you like, oh, I use he, they, then you can ask them like, oh, do you care like which one I use more? And then just kind of go on that. Just it's kind of like, and yeah, just like asking people what they're just like checking in every once in a while, you know? Like one thing that I really enjoy is when like I have friends or peers who come up to me and they're like, who I haven't talked to in a while, and they're like, hey, just checking that you're still using like he and him pronouns, you know, and just yeah, just like doing that essentially is good.
Do you,
Yeah,
do you
not
when someone
sorry.
says they're like, when someone says they're like he, they, or she, they, is the they part saying I'm cool with they, or is it saying I want you to say they? I mean, I understand you're saying check in with them, but like is that basically saying like obviously non-gender pronouns are a good idea and we should all use them in society?
I think that usually if they're that's like they're introducing themselves, that is a pronoun they're comfortable being addressed using. Because if they weren't okay with it, they wouldn't say, hey, my pronouns aren't this and this. I think it's a safe thing to know that if they're saying it, probably it's okay. But also I think an important thing that we didn't mention was neopronouns. Those are extremely important. Neopronouns are just like any pronouns that's other than like she, he, and they. Which I'm mentioning this because there are many pronouns out there. Like there's one of my friends use em, and I think when coming across pronouns, it can be hard to know how to use them, but also knowing, again, ask how to use them. Say, how can I use these pronouns correctly? Can you give me some example sentences? And it's okay to be confused, and again, it's okay not to know, as long as you are showing your support and asking them how to use them properly.
Sam, I'm really glad you mentioned neopronouns real quick because I want to talk about this. So I personally use neopronouns myself sometimes, and neopronouns can be kind of confusing because it's not he or she, and then it's also not they. There's a lot of really great resources out there, a lot of good websites on teaching you how to use neopronouns. One thing I want to say about neopronouns real quick is that I hear a lot of people who believe that neopronouns is like this, I don't know, trend or whatever amongst young people, which is not true, because I do research on things I love. But neopronouns have been around for a very long time, because what it means by neopronoun is essentially any pronoun that isn't he, she, or they. And there's like a bunch of like English writing from the 1800s that use it. So it is a thing. It's just like it seems like it's a new thing because now it's more in the mainstream, you know? But like what Sam was saying, just like if someone comes to you and they're using a pronoun that you're not sure how to use, just ask them how to use it in a sentence. And you know, like I just like do research basically if you're really not sure. Because one thing I want to mention, like as a trans person, I am fine with answering a lot of questions from people, especially when they're trying to learn. But you will have to do your own research, because not every trans person will be open to answering questions, because sometimes it can feel like you're the spokesperson, you know? And so that's why like doing your own research is a good idea, and like teaching other people to do their own research, you know, because I imagine yeah. Sorry, I'm rambling.
Okay, so I do have a question from the chat. So I'm gonna read it as it was put in there. And so it's not my question, so I unfortunately can't offer any follow-up, but hopefully it'll be good. So the question is, so advice about, so same topic, pronoun. Kids who go by one set of pronouns with friends versus a different set of pronouns with grown-ups. And the questioner is asking how they, as a parent, should talk to a kid who goes by one set of pronouns with friends versus one set of pronouns with grown-ups.
I think, well, first, I think if you know the kid has using two different pronouns, and like, also here's another thing. If you find out that your kid is using a different set of pronouns with their friends, first and foremost, be aware of how you found out. If you found out because they told you, if they found out because they told you, that means they like that's some information they're willing to share. But if you found out from a work colleague or you happen to catch it, don't like ask them if they haven't told you, because then they can feel like nervous and scared because they're essentially like they feel like they might feel forced to talk about something that they're not ready to talk about with you yet. Because I know I personally like went by different pronouns with my friend group first to see which pronouns I liked more before I told my parents, and it's not because I didn't trust my parents or I didn't think they would react well, but with my friend group, they're my age and they were going through the same thing as me, so I felt more connected on this issue with them than I did my parents. And I felt and I saw them like for the entire day, so I saw them more than I saw my parents, so that's why I use different pronouns. But if you do know and your kid told you that they're using separate pronouns with adults than their friends, you can ask them why and you're wondering why, you can ask them why they feel they want to use different pronouns with their friends. It could be for any number of reasons. They could just like the way it feels, because I know there are people who identify as women but use like they, them, or he, him pronouns. So that's another thing. But yeah, just like ask them why, and then if they prefer it, if they prefer adults using a certain pronoun to their friends, then just go with that, because that's what they're comfortable with. And at the end of the day, all we want is for kids to be happy and comfortable. So yeah, Sam, if you want to add anything, feel free.
Sorry. But yeah, no, that is extremely important also to mention that pronouns don't always equal gender. There are cis people that use they pronouns as well as like whatever pronoun, like there are cis people who use they pronouns as well. Which I know it can be confusing saying that, but it is important to know that at the end of the day, as long as people use pronouns that they're comfortable using, that's really all that matters. So I'm not sure what else to add.
Can I add to that? I think something that's also really important, and just an observation that I've noticed in my practice, is that often as adults, we're trying to intellectualize something and trying to understand the why. And I think it's so great if your student is ready to engage in that conversation, but we don't have to understand something to support it. And so I think, if you can't explain it or have a full understanding of why, because your student may not fully understand why. It's a journey and a process, and gender is fluid, and so is our expression of our gender. And so I think the important piece is being supportive. That's kind of one of the phrases we use in GSA all the time, is like, we don't have to understand it to support it. And I think the other piece is if a student is using pronouns, different pronouns or a different name in different spaces, just as that supporting adult, making sure you're hyper vigilant of who is in the space. And so I think we have students who use certain pronouns with their teacher, but when they're in the full class, it's different. But when they're in my office, and so just being really vigilant about who is in the space so that you are, again, showing support with your actions as well as your words.
Yeah, that was really well said. I definitely agree. And another thing, I think this is something I tell my dad, because he didn't really know much about gender and sexuality. So coming to him was kind of hard for me. But I told him, it's okay if you don't understand it. I'll try my best to explain it to you. as long as you respect it, that's all I can ask for, which he does. And it definitely makes a difference. Even if you don't understand it, just providing your support and respecting it is still really important because you can still feel like really safe. And I think that that is extremely important to do.
I have another question from the chat. This is a question for Miss Edwards. How will the day of silence work this year with Zoom, etc.?
Great question. So the way that we've done the way that we've done Day of Silence in the past is that we provide students with a variety of ways to participate. And so you can take a vow of silence. You can, there's always a supportive color that goes with GLSEN each year. So you can wear a t-shirt. We provide students with stickers that if they don't have that color t-shirt, you have a free sticker that you can wear so you can show support in different ways. And so we've talked a lot about how can we make that happen with some kids at school and some kids at home, and how do we, again, I think it goes back to how do you reaffirm community when we're not actually seeing each other and with each other. But the presentation that you all just saw, every single King Art student will do over Zoom with their class. And so the video you all watched, the lip sync video that it will be done. And then there's an additional video from Amaze about gender expression. One of the slides that I skipped is the kind of the processing slide about what did we see and why is it important and how can we make King Arts a more inclusive community and again, foster that belongingness. So for Day of Silence this year, the theme is actually make your silence loud. So we have encouraged students to let their teachers know if they're taking a vow of silence. We are having in the announcements every day that week a reminder of you can wear I think it's blue t-shirt this year. And then all students will get to participate and see that presentation that you all just saw and engage in a conversation about it.
Excellent, thank you. We've talked a little bit about this, but I was also curious. As a parent, I always want to be, my kids know that I am available and open and supportive of their identity. And are there certain ways that we can indicate that to our kids without, Chris and Sam, you kind of talked a little bit about also, sometimes there are conversations that it's just like, this is too much, or I think Ms. Edwards, you mentioned cringy a little bit, right, with the middle schoolers. So I sometimes feel like I'm going a little bit overboard. So I wanted to understand balance of making sure that my kids know I am open and ready and available, but also not, I don't know, just getting to a place where they don't want to share, if that makes sense.
Listen, overboard is better than nothing. So I just want to get that out of the way real quick. But also, you don't have to do a whole. I can't give specifics on what you should do because everyone's different and everyone's family is different. But there's little ways you can do it. And personally, for me, I think you only have to indicate it maybe once or twice, and your kid's gonna remember that. Because when they're thinking about their identity and they're thinking about if they want to, how to come out to you, they're going to think they're going to take these interactions and think, okay, how will my mom or dad or guardian react based on this, And if they think about how, one time you, for Pride or something, you bought a rainbow or an ally flag to show solidarity, or you use the correct pronoun for your coworker after they came out, then they're going to remember that and be like, oh, okay, so my mom or dad or guardian is already supportive of, these people, so they'll be supportive of me. So you don't have to just go completely overboard, hang rainbow flags in every room of the house or whatever. You don't have to do that, but you can just do little things. Maybe, well, here's one idea. Let's say you're going to, I don't know, first staff meeting of the year or something. you can buy a little button that has your pronouns on it so that everybody would know. It's great for you. It's great because it also normalizes it for trans people, but then your kid would see it. And then if they ever want to come out, they're going to be like, oh, well, my mom's already, or my mom or dad is already supportive. So I feel safe enough to come out, Like, it's just like the little things that you need to do.
No, definitely I have to agree. It's the little things that matter because sometimes I feel like it's sweet when parents are trying their hardest to like be like, here, let me buy you, let's have rainbow flags everywhere, let's like have these rainbow socks, rainbow masks, and like all this like rainbow stuff. It's awesome because they're trying their best. It's sweet, but at the same time, it's kind of just like a uncomfortable thing. You're just like, thanks. Um, because they're trying so hard and it's nice, but at the same time, again, it's the little things that count because it can just take one thing and definitely they will remember that 100%, whether it be good or bad, they will definitely carry that with them. So that will definitely impact the way that they come out to you, when, how, and whatnot.
And another thing is that, oh, sorry, I missaid words, but another thing is that if your kid, what might happen, because I did this is my personal experience, is that before I came out to my parents, because I was experimenting with my gender, I started like going outside what was considered the norm for my assigned gender at birth. So, I had short hair, I started wearing more masculine clothes, that sort of thing. So your kid might already start experimenting, before they come out to you. And you might pick up on that. You might think, oh, maybe my kid is like, trans or whatever, or queer. But just wait for them to come out to you. Don't like force it onto them. But if they start experimenting and you pick up on the vibes, just go with it and be like, oh, because it's like, they might not even come out. They might just like suddenly like to wear, certain clothes or wear makeup or whatever. It might not be because they're trans or queer, but like just go with what your kid starts to do and then just be supportive and validating. And like, again, that's all you really have to do is be validating towards them.
I was just going to add, I think being open about your own education. So I think when when I mentioned cringy, that's the word that my kids often say is like, well, my mom is like, how do you identify today? How are like how are you feeling? Do you want and it can be a lot, and you get like that the spotlight can feel really hot sometimes. And so, some of the books that Chris mentioned, if your kid sees that on the coffee table, that tells them something. Right. And so if we're watching movies that are honoring and centering voices of people of the community with our family, and if I have this book that I'm reading, like keeping it up, like those kind of things, just normalizing that as part of everyday life and not something that is necessarily has to be a message of affirmation and support. Like it is, but we can be subtle about it. It still communicates that level of support. And so I think that's also important. And we're always growing and learning. And so I think just being really intentional about the resources that you're utilizing.
I'd like to ask something if I could. First, I want to thank both Sam and Chris. I really so appreciate you taking the time and just having this wonderful perspective of, the older teenager and getting us to, think and reflect back on the younger ages that we have and that we have at school. I'm wondering if you're thinking back on your own maybe middle school experiences, is there anything that comes to mind, like of experiences you really wish had been available to you when you were in middle school, or activities or things that you think, boy, that would have been so helpful to have had that then? That is anything that we could be proactively putting into school at this point?
Oh, sorry, you wanna?
Oh, no, I'll be quick. I mean, what you're doing now by being here is already really good because it shows that you want to do things. For me personally, I went to a private middle school, so small classes, same 5 teachers for the entire 3 years I was in middle school. But one thing I think would be great is just basically having the conversations, because my journey and my friends' journey started in middle school, but we had to do all of our research by ourselves because there was no resources and no one we could really go to to talk about what we were going through, what we were thinking about. We had like the one day of the year where we talked about gender and sexuality during sex ed, but that was it. There was no other discussion about it. So just like having those conversations and opening that space is good for kids. And secondly, there's stuff you can do in just like your basic curriculum. I don't know how King Arts curriculum works, and I don't know like if any of you are teachers, but just like sprinkling in some stuff here and there would be good. Like maybe for your English classes, you read a book by an author who is openly gay or trans or something, or um, in your science classes, you make it clear that sex does not equal gender. Um, or let's see, what's another really good one? Oh, or like in history classes, you could just like mention, like a person who may have been, you can mention Stonewall, you can mention a gay or queer person, just like little things here and there. Because you don't have to like have a whole curriculum based around it. You can just do the little things because at the end of the day, it's like your kids are probably going to go out and do research by themselves anyway. But if you set up the space where they can be ready to have those conversations with their peers also without feeling weird about it, that would be great. Because as Miss Edwards said, with the whole cringy thing, if you start young and you open the conversation, it's going to become less and less awkward because they're like, oh, we already talked about this. So then when their friend is like, hey, I'm trans, everyone's going to be like, oh, cool. You want to go play kickball? I don't know what kids do these days, but yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. I think the reason why they do find it cringy is because it's not normalized. And so asking or talking about it can seem strange to them. But also for me in middle school, I didn't have like any support system like whatsoever. I didn't have like a GSA. I didn't really have like openly supportive teachers. I didn't like the students themselves weren't nice really either. They were very openly homophobic, which was weird because also for me, I had to figure out all my identities on my own, which was very strange and hard and frustrating because I feel like it would have been a little bit easier to have someone like with me or help me or guide me through that journey, not telling me what I am, because you can't tell someone what they are, but you can encourage them and point them towards the right direction and just provide them with that support through their journey can definitely help, because it is hard when you're feeling something, you don't know what it is, you don't know, like you think it's wrong because if you have nothing telling you. I think I froze again.
We can still hear you though.
You can still hear me? Okay, cool. But just again, the whole thing where if you are not taught about something or not told about something, you're instantly going to think that it's wrong. So I feel like having that discussion would have been extremely important for me and maybe other kids in my class. Yeah.
Also, I just thought about this. If you see kids in your class being homophobic or transphobic, just like shut that down as soon as you can. Obviously, there's a difference between ignorance because they're young and ignorance because of bad stuff, right? And like there's obviously a line between that. And so like if they're ignorant because they're just young and they don't know, then you can have like a conversation about like, hey, here's why what you said was bad, just like don't do it again, that sort of thing. And then if they're being like openly homophobic or transphobic, then you can be like, okay, now we need to have a serious talk because what you said was unacceptable, because like I had a really bad experience in my middle school during the gender and sexuality talk because, well, first of all, there were no teachers in the room to supervise us. So it went poorly, and it kind of made me want to go back into the closet a little bit. But just like having like adults in that space also to make sure that like kids aren't, being mean, because it could also just be like they're saying what they're saying because that's what they think is like what Sam was saying is that when you don't learn about something, you automatically think it's bad. So that could be, so they could just be doing that because they think it's bad. But if you have the conversation of like, here's why what you did was not cool, then like, then they're gonna be like, oh, okay, cool, and change their behavior.
There's a question in the chat that's related to that. So I don't know, Chris and Sam, you have ideas, Ms. Edwards, if you have ideas, or even Dr. Anderson, if you have ideas about this question. So What advice would you give an elementary school student who's an ally and doesn't know what to do when their trans or non-binary friends are being bullied? What steps can they take?
I think in this scenario, I personally have not been bullied because I wasn't out at the time, and Sam, you can jump in if I'm off base here, but since they're in elementary school, I would say do what we're told to do as elementary school students when someone's getting bullied, and go tell a teacher, because it's still just bullying at the end of the day. Just because they're trans or gay doesn't negate the fact that it's not a special scenario. It's just bullying. And so they should find like an adult who would be like, hey, that's not cool. And then if it's a repeat thing, then you'd probably have to get like parents involved and stuff. But I would say do what you're told to do as like a young kid if your friend's being bullied, and go find an adult, because when you're in elementary school, I don't think you should be handling that sort of situation on your own, because you're an elementary school student.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Also for me, I was open about my sexuality in middle school, which was not good because I got called slurs and the teachers wouldn't do anything whenever anyone would come to them, or no students wanted to say anything. But even when they did, the teachers wouldn't really do anything. So I think it's important having those teachers that those kids can come to, and having supportive teachers that will actually handle the situation rather than just ignoring it.
Also what Sam was saying, because if that can happen, is like challenge your coworkers and your colleagues if they say something that's inappropriate, because again, there's a difference between bad ignorance and normal ignorance, as I'm going to say. But like, not everyone's going to have the opportunity to be in a space like this where they can talk openly about it, but if you're talking to your coworker about like pronoun usage and how to be respectful, then even if they don't know anything about like being trans or being queer, then they can, but if they see a trans student being bullied, then they still know that that's not okay, and they can still shut that down. And then it spreads, like a wildfire. The more and more you have conversations, the more and more people will learn, and then the more normalized these things will become, sort of thing. You just got to be open about it. Yell it from the rooftops.
Yeah, and just the staff perspective on any form of bullying, I totally agree with what Chris and Sam said. Tell someone. I tell my students all the time, we can't support things that we don't know about. And if we do know about them, I also think it's important, if you tell an adult and it wasn't addressed, or you're still not, tell another adult. Find another staff member, because, and I know that's so hard to put on a student, is to ask multiple people for help. But if you're in a situation, thank you for sharing that, Sam, but if you're in a situation where that first adult doesn't do something, like, and someone will. And so please keep reporting it and making sure, and once students find that adult, then they know this is someone I can go to in these situations for guidance and support. And I think the other piece that, Chris, I think you mentioned, like the difference between kind of like that ignorance because you're young versus, I think as educators and just as parents, it's our responsibility to not only support our students in their learning, but also in their unlearning of the bias and stereotypes that they've either been directly taught or absorbed from our society. And so I think it's important to talk about that learning and development as it naturally occurs, but also like there's unlearning and dismantling of things that needs to happen too.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like what I was saying could be considered concerning because I mentioned how teachers might like turn you away. Definitely, it's still important to reach out and find someone that will help the situation for sure.
Also, I wanted to say this to the adults here. It is okay to make mistakes. Like, I just want to make that clear. I know you guys are educators and you're supposed to be like the standard or whatever, but it is okay to make mistakes and be open about making those mistakes. So like if you have a student in class and you accidentally use the wrong pronoun, and you can, like, well, first of all, if you have a student who's trans in class, you should ask them how they want to go about the correcting of pronoun, because some students prefer if you do it in private after class, and some students prefer if you do it just right then and there. But if you mess up with the pronoun, you can just be like, oh, sorry, he, and then just move on, you know, and you can apologize. I have had teachers in the past where they've misgendered me and I didn't even catch it, but they misgendered me and then they email me or they pull me aside after class and they're like, hey, I'm sorry I misgendered you. And that means a lot to me because while I also appreciate people learning about stuff, I also appreciate people admitting their mistakes because that tells me that you are applying what you're learning. And that means a lot to me personally as a queer person. So just be open about your mistakes because if your students see you make a mistake, then they know what to do if they make a mistake. So again, like spreading like a wildfire sort of thing.
Yeah, I think also when you are correcting yourself after making a mistake, to not make a big deal out of it. Don't be like, oh my God, oh, I'm so sorry, oh God. Like, it's okay to mess up. It's definitely okay. I think another thing, I'd use my dad as an example. Again, he didn't really know about it. He makes mistakes a lot. And although I might be like, ouch, at the same time, I'm like, I'm okay with it because he's still trying. And that's all that matters, that you make that effort and you correct yourself and you do the best of your ability. And hopefully eventually you can like latch on to whatever it is you're trying to get used to. But definitely making mistakes is okay as long as you're trying.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. I know we're just about at time, so I just wanted to see if you all had any final, things you'd like to share, or any final questions we might have as well. Matthew, do we have any questions? Okay.
If we don't have any questions, I want to say something really quick. So as a queer person who has gone through middle school and is about to graduate from high school, I want to say that I commend all of you, all the adults here today who are here in this meeting and are listening to what Ms. Edwards and Sam and I are saying, because it means a lot to me when I see people, queer people my age, but it also means a lot to me when I see adults who are like just trying to adapt to this new world. Because I don't want to make it, I hope this doesn't sound mean, but I know you guys didn't grow up with these conversations happening around you. So it means a lot to me that you guys are trying to learn, because I think one of the worst excuses people have when they are being rude is, oh, I just didn't grow up with it, and like that's understandable if like you're struggling to understand they them pronouns, but if you're still trying, that's all that really matters. So, and also that you're trying to make schools are safer places, because I know for a lot of queer people, school can be like icky. So I appreciate all of you making your school a safer space. So golf claps.
Yeah, I definitely agree too. It's awesome, especially like from what I was shown, it seems like pretty dang good. Like I wish I had what your school has. Like that seems so amazing. And not only that, I feel like just real quick, I should mention this, the word queer. I personally love the word queer. I refer to myself as queer all the time. I feel so comfortable with that word. Not everyone does or would like you to refer them as queer because it was once used in an offensive way. But it definitely is a word that I find validating, that I love. It is an umbrella term, and some people identify as queer specifically because it's so much easier. Yeah, so much easier. And it's a great way to it's just an umbrella term, and it's just, I'm comfortable with that, and I love that word. So it's important also to ask who is and isn't comfortable being referred to as that. So
thanks for mentioning that. I forgot about that.
Awesome. I hope you all take a look at the chat. I think there's just a lot of gratitude, Sam and Chris, for all that you have shared with us, and Miss Edwards as well for facilitating our presentation. We're so grateful to have your voices, and we're just so grateful for you all and your presence. So thank you. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. This concludes our PTA meeting, and wishing you the best for the rest of the week. Take care.
Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.